Okay, and welcome to the next episode. I am lucky enough to be here with Sam Meadley, a good friend of mine today, and Sam and Jess is Sam's wife. They recently went on a trip to Uganda, and I thought I would kind of try to find out what it was like for the traveller on their journey, if you like, to find out about travel health information and do the research prior to going on the trip and see what kind of service they got in various different places. So Sam, this was your first time traveling in the developing world, is that right?
That's right.
And so what made you want to venture into that part of the world, and what made you particularly choose Uganda?
Yeah, okay. So adventure is something that we wanted to kind of do. We wanted to travel. We always kind of stuck to Europe, and we wanted to kind of expand that a little bit. And we were really fortunate because a good friend of ours, Jamie, she lived in Uganda and had lived in Uganda for, I think, 2.5 years at the time. She was doing some PhD research out there. So she was, often encouraged us to go visit.
Right.
And
so did you kind of see that as being a more sheltered introduction to the developing world because you had someone who lived out there?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sheltered isn't something I looked for, but I guess I kind of got that for free. Local knowledge was helpful, so I guess that is sheltered. Yeah. But it was helpful she had a private car, for example.
Right.
So we could get to a lot of places quite easily.
Right.
When we were with her.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So were you aware of, before you went there, of the health risks that would be involved in going to that part of the world, or did that only start to come when you started to properly research it and go and seek travel health advice, for example?
We were aware, obviously, of risks, but we had no idea what the risks would be until we started to go out and do some research. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And were you surprised?
A little. I didn't really have a basis. So I didn't know if it was going to be particularly. I don't know. I didn't know if I was going to need a lot of inoculations or jabs, or if I needed a few. Yeah. I didn't really at the time. I was quite ignorant to it. I didn't even realise which ones I'd already had.
Right. Yeah.
So there was some research in that, kind of finding out.
We get that a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's pretty common, yeah.
Yeah, because this was the first time outside of Europe and America. So that's the first time outside the Western world.
Right.
This was it was a learning curve. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was useful.
So normally, before we do kind of, when people come in to get our services from a travel health specialist, we'll do this risk assessment with them. We'll ask them all about their journey, etc. And hopefully that's what happened to you. Do you want to just give us a bit of a rundown of what's involved in your trip, where you were staying, what you were doing, how long you were there for, etc., etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we flew into the capital, which is Kampala. From Kampala, we were picked up by our friend in a private car. So we did a lot of driving around in a private car.
Right.
So when we did a lot of travelling, but something that was picked up at the time was is that on a bus? Is that in a public place with other people?
Yeah.
And that is something we didn't do. It was always in a car.
Right.
So then we drove to Jinja, which is where our friend lived at the time, and then we stayed at her residence for a few days. Mm-hmm. So that's all very run-of-the-mill stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
she lived in a nice area.
She did, yes, really beautiful. Yeah.
Good quality of accommodation.
High quality of accommodation.
Right.
Yeah. Fairly Western.
Yeah.
Fairly Western living. At
right.
that point, there's a bathroom within the house.
Yeah, yeah.
Apart from sleeping under mosquito nets, it could have been anywhere.
Yeah,
really,
sure.
At the time.
Okay. Yeah.
But then we started to get a little bit more adventurous.
Yeah.
And we went to, I can't remember, it was a while ago now. I can't actually remember the order we did these things, but we did some camping in Sipi, which is in the east of the country.
A national park or something?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. And that was, that wasn't a posh safari tent camping. That was a dome tent that we took with us.
Fairly roughing it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we did that for 2 to 3 nights, and then we went over to Murchison Falls, which is a national park.
Yeah.
And stayed in safari tents.
Right.
Which were already there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also went whitewater rafting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then after that, we stayed in. So we did a lot of different accommodations. One of that accommodation was like a wooden dormitory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think that's about everything.
So I think if I was doing my medical notes, I would be writing mixed accommodation.
Yeah.
At this point, because obviously you're doing a lot of different things. So how did you go about doing your research? Was it going straight to a travel health professional, going online, or going to your GP first? How did that all happen?
Right. Yeah. So the first port of call was certainly the GP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if only for the proximity to my house, it's so close.
Right. Yeah. Good start.
And that was really when I started to find out what I'd already had, what jabs I already had, what I didn't need, and what I did need, and then also that was when I was first open to the idea of you could have these, you don't have to have these.
Exactly. Right.
So it's like the optionals.
Yeah.
That hadn't been something that had crossed my mind before. Actually, I kind of expected to go in. Was told you're going to Uganda.
These are what you need.
You need these things.
Yeah.
But what really happened was.
Yeah, I think as everyone's watching this, they'll realise that that's very, very common. That's what people generally believe. You can go get a list.
Yep.
This country, these vaccines. That's
Go.
what you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like that, is it? It's
Nope.
about looking at your risks and kind of making choices and being guided by the practitioner. So, and did you feel you were guided fairly well there?
I did feel I was guided fairly well. I had I was going to bring my little book. You get a little book and it tells you exactly what you had at the time.
We know the book.
Yeah, my memory's terrible.
Yeah.
But I had all of the ones that were kind of recommended that I could get on the NHS.
Yeah.
And then we talked about going to a private travel clinic to get some of the ones that were recommended but not provided on the NHS.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that GP practice that you went to, they not only couldn't give you them on the NHS, but they couldn't give you them and charge you. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So they just did the kind of free ones, and then they said, "Look, go to."
Yeah, they gave some suggestions of where to go.
Okay. Right. So you then went to, and did you feel like you got good advice from that?
I did. I'm very much someone who likes a definitive recommendation, especially something I don't know much about.
Right. Yeah.
So I did kind of come out thinking, oh, there's some things I'm not sure about here.
Yeah.
Because the optional jabs and also anti-malarials. Yeah. There was quite a few. Well, I think there's 3 options.
Yeah.
And each which had side effects and cost implications, and also regularity of how you needed to take them.
Yeah.
One a day or many a day or whatever.
It is a confusing. There's a lot of information in travel health. There's a lot of information in the anti-malarials, and it's quite hard to deliver that information to someone in a very short period of time, which is how long consultations last in GPs. Absolutely. So often after you've been, you have to then go and do quite a lot of reading, on top of that to kind of try and help make your decision. So did you then go to a private travel clinic?
I did, okay. Yeah. Sorry. There was, I'm sure this is maybe the case still, but there was a requirement to have a yellow fever certificate. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah. To enter right. Uganda or exit Uganda. One of the reasons it was a requirement.
Right. Okay.
So I had to get that. That was non-optional and not available on the NHS.
Okay.
So I knew I had to go regardless.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
And then the optional ones that we took. I mean, you might need to trigger my memory here a little bit. So what do you think? What would the optional ones be?
So basically, for the ones that were regarded as being, you're calling them kind of compulsory ones, but they're the kind of ones that would be recommended to everyone going to the country. They would be hepatitis A, probably typhoid, and diphtheria, tetanus and polio if you were out of date with that. And then you'd be looking at, as alternative ones, or to be considered vaccines, there'd be rabies, hepatitis B, and then you might be looking at meningococcal ACWY. There's the yellow fever, which sometimes it's optional, as in whether there's a risk or not there, but actually there's often a need for certificate requirements, as you touched on, and it's been changing so much recently. I would have to probably look up specifically what the WHO guidelines for Uganda at this particular time, because I think it has changed quite recently. So with those vaccines, do you remember which ones you then got, if I've listed them?
Yeah, I think we just took the yellow fever and obviously the antimalarials from the private travel clinic.
Right.
Something that we were really debating for a while was rabies.
Okay.
The reason we didn't go for rabies at the time was just a way up, cost versus risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about hepatitis B?
Hepatitis B, we got hepatitis B. Yes.
Right, you did go for that.
Yes.
And that at the private clinic.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay, that's interesting. So you decided that the rabies, you thought, for the cost, for the short period of time you were going, you decided it wasn't.
It's really interesting. I think it's more, we had that. So this time last year we went to Southeast Asia and to Vietnam and Cambodia.
Yeah.
And we had the rabies then. So I think it was pretty. The risk may be the same, less. I'm not sure, but I think it was definitely the cost really did play into that.
Yeah.
Because I think when we went to Uganda a few years ago, there was we didn't. I don't know. Cost was more important to us, whereas last year I think we decided that precaution was more important to us.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and I mean obviously there'll be some people watching who tend more to lean people towards choosing hepatitis B over rabies when they're trying to make that financial decision. Some people would go the other way, and obviously largely it's going to depend on exactly what type of trip you're going on and the risks in the certain countries you're going to. And there's, I think, too big a subject to kind of fully get into, which, and maybe there's no answer to it as well, because it's all down to probability of your likelihood of getting these diseases and how consequential these diseases are if you do get them as well. So it's a difficult thing to work out, but it doesn't sound like you got unreasonable advice for the 2 trips you talked about there. So on the whole, you didn't feel like you got quite good service, and you didn't feel like there was much conflicting advice. Would you say that's fair enough? Just a bit confusing, maybe.
Yeah, it's certainly not conflicting. I think the two. So of the antimalarials, we were told about 3, if I remember correctly, and I think the GP preferred one that was in a cost tier, the middle one, and I think the private travel clinic suggested maybe the lower one.
Right. Because
we, not just because it was a discussion, and we talked about, what was important to us, and that was kind of what we came away with.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, I think it's important to mention, I think the anti-malarial drugs that you're talking about, they're the same effectiveness against malaria. That's not why they're different prices. They're different prices because of different amounts of side effects. One of them, the more expensive one, is a newer drug which you only have to take for a shorter period of time at the end of your trip, which is quite convenient for people and tends to have kind of less listed side effects, so people like to go for it for that. And probably people do like to go for this drug because people think expensive equals safer as well. There's a certain element of that as well.
We went for the Doxy.
Doxy.
Yeah, which is, I think, is the cheaper end.
Yes.
You have to take it for before your trip and after your trip.
Yeah, before your trip, during, and then for a full 28 days after.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were okay with it? No side effects?
No, I was fine. My wife did. I think had some stomach bloating.
Yeah.
And she wasn't too keen on that, but apart from that, we were all good.
Yeah, and the whole length of the trip was what, just a couple of weeks?
Yeah, just over 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, certainly, Doxy is the choice for backpackers going for quite a while. And sometimes on 2-week trips, people are going to spend the kind of money that they would spend going to like package holidays and that kind of thing. Prefer to go for Malarone just because of the convenience. But it's what is personal choice really when it comes down to those things. Great. So yeah, that's answered most of my questions here. Once you actually got there, in terms of risks to your health, were there any surprises you got where you thought, God, I didn't even consider this, or no one told me about that thing, or was it all because you'd done plenty of research and you'd be given advice and it was all as expected?
Yeah, from our research, we're the kind of people that always buys the travel book before we go.
Yeah.
And
reads it.
Rather
Wow.
than just collecting dust.
Yeah.
So we done it. There was no surprises from a health perspective. No. No surprises. Well, there was probably no surprises from a trip perspective. Really, it was especially because we had a friend there, so
Yeah.
that was really helpful.
Did you, out of interest, did any travel health professionals discuss road traffic and potential accidents and how safe? No, they didn't. Okay,
It's really interesting. You should say that because that is something that was. Did you have any surprises? Yes.
Okay.
That was a surprise.
So you're in the car with this friend of yours
Jamie,
driving,
yeah.
and you were a bit like, this is a bit scary.
It was just a total culture shock.
Yeah.
When it's the first place I'd been to where sounding your horn was like a warning of I'm coming. Rather than get out of my way. Yeah. Or you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're in everybody's way, it seems there's a lot of car horns going.
Yeah. I'm sounding my horn because I'm the bigger vehicle.
Yeah.
You better get out of the way.
That's right. Yeah.
Definitely.
So that was a surprise.
Yeah, and it's one thing that maybe is to a certain extent a bit neglected in travel health consultations because we're focusing on the diseases and the vaccine preventable things, but actually your biggest chance of dying is in a vehicle.
Right, yeah.
By quite a long way.
Yeah.
So but it's interesting. So is there anything, one thing I'd like to ask you about insurance. Did you get good comprehensive insurance before you went?
Yes. Yeah, there's actually we got very comprehensive insurance because of the rafting we were doing. It took us a while to find an insurance policy, I think, that included that.
Yeah.
But there was one stipulation in the insurance, and it said we couldn't go whitewater rafting, but no golf.
Golf can be dangerous too.
I found that fascinating. And at one point we took a shortcut through a golf course.
Oh.
We were terrified if we got hit by a ball.
Yeah. No cover.
No cover.
And out of interest, when you were with your comprehensive insurance covering you for your rafting, had you ever kind of considered, okay, one of us has an accident in this raft at this point in time, even with our good insurance? Had you thought much about how far away you were from good medical care and how you would have got to that good medical care?
No, that was totally in the hands of the
gods,
the provider of the. We kind of picked up a reputable tour rafting company.
Right. Okay.
And it was just outside of Ginger, which is a fairly large city.
Yeah.
So I think there was So I guess. No, I didn't kind of like track a route to the hospital.
Yeah.
But I figured we're not too far. I think we were half an hour out.
Yeah.
By car.
So what was the most? When were you at your most remote during that whole trip?
I think that was certainly when we were camping in Sippy.
Sippy, yeah.
Yeah, that was very far away from anything. Really.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So had you been bitten or scratched by a rabid bat at that point, it might have taken you quite a long time to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Care.
That was. That would have taken a while.
Yeah.
I don't know what the plan was there. Probably hop over the border to Kenya and just hope.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay, and so is there anything, looking back at the whole series of advice you got before you went? Obviously you're learning things all the time and you learn things on the trip. Is there anything you would have done differently about your prep before you went, or you're quite happy with how that went?
No, I'm pretty happy with how that went. Yeah. It was a really great introduction to the developing world.
Yeah, brilliant.
We just came back with incredible stories and experience
and desire to go again.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
In fact, I feel like we didn't do enough whilst we were there. Even though we were there and we had this plan, there was still more to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to leave it.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I hope that's given people a bit of insight into the traveller's perspective on the whole pre-travel experience, and I think it's been quite useful actually. I think I could see me doing things like this again with people, especially maybe people who have had significant surprises or have had disasters or something like that have happened, and what they've learned from that. But that's been really interesting and useful. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we'll see you next time.